Hello friends, Those Back Pages here. I hope you're well. For tonight's episode, we're going to be having a collecting discussion with my dad. So we're going to bring him on. His name's Bill. Bring him on right now.
Hello everyone, how are you doing today? Yes, we're going to be discussing collecting. Not necessarily just sports cards, but collecting in general. I'm a collector as well, but the things that I collect are not that intense, not that valuable. It's just things that I personally enjoy. I collect various t-shirts. Got my Harley Davidson shirt on here. This one's from Harley Davidson of New York City. When we travel around the country, we like to stop at the dealer. I don't have a bike. I'd love to have one, but living in New York City, don't consider it the safest thing to do. So I just collect the shirts. I also have a small collection of Hallmark muscle cars. They come out every year as an ornament at Christmas time, and my mom gets it for me every year and sends it to me from Florida. So I have that collection from day one. And it's a great little collection. Is it of much value? Only to me, because of where it came from. That's why I consider myself a collector. There are other things that I collect, but I've divested some of that collection along the way because it's not necessary for me to have everything. And there are other things that I might want to have, so I'll part with some of the things I did collect along the way. Over COVID time, we've all had a lot of time to reflect on what we have and what we really, really want. So I've been actually selling a lot of things, mostly things that I don't utilize that much. I had some kayaks, sold them off. I had a Hess truck collection. There again, no attachment to them. Some of them I got paid very well for. Some of them I just basically gave away. And I was happy that the recipients were pleased to get them. You know, it wasn't anything that I had an attachment to. As you get older, you like to clean out a little things. So we'll be making space and not filling it up, which is a good thing.
So let's, since, we are talking about all collecting, but, the main focus of everyone watching tonight is pretty much sports cards. So if you could, I know you weren't big into them when you were small, but if you have any recollections of when you were a kid.
When I was a kid, sports cards were just to have them. I was a Yankee fan, still am a Yankee fan.
Well, we all have our faults.
Much to Eric's, dismay. But Mickey Mantles, Roger Maris, Yogi Berra, Whitey Ford, that era of cards and players. We flipped our cards. We scaled our cards.
This was in the 50s, right?
60, in the 50s and 60s.
50s and 60s.
We would, attach our cards to our bicycles and let them make a motorcycle noise through the spokes. We destroyed them. Probably between our destroying cards and our parents throwing them out when we left the house, it made for scarcity of cards.
It's true.
Which increased the value for today's collectability.
Yeah. Did you enjoy the gum?
Always enjoyed the gum. That was like the first thing. Pull the gum out and chew away. Now, if you find a wax pack, the gum is not worth anything anymore. You break a tooth.
Yeah, pretty much.
But we also collected other things. My generation, we loved cars. We were really big on cars. Unfortunately, collecting a lot of cars takes a lot of money and a lot of space.
Even back then?
Even back then. I would buy cars for $15 or $25 with a full tank of gas.
Real cars?
Real cars.
Okay.
And I can say this and probably not get in big trouble anymore, But back in the day, before all the computers and tracking and everything else like that, we would buy a car, throw a set of plates on them, and drive them around. Never bothered to register, never bothered to get them insured, just drive them around. And when we killed them, we drive them to the junkyard and get our $15 back.
Really, and then just pick up another car.
And go get another one.
So as long as it had plates, pretty much people left you alone.
That was it. I mean, you didn't do anything crazy. I mean,
Well,
you weren't
yes.
drag racing down the street. You know.
Right. Nothing to draw attention to yourself. Obviously, anything of an illegal nature, but other than that, you could drive, just park in the lot or whatever.
Yeah.
Go to the drive-through or
Park on the street, leave it there.
drive-in movies, and
We would do all of those things, and nobody cared. You know.
Now, would you classify these as fixer-uppers? These cars, or
Just common cars, something that, you know, you look at on the street today and it was nothing. Today's equivalent would be like a Honda Civic,
Okay.
not souped up or anything like that.
Right.
Just, you know, just an everyday car.
so no Mustangs or
No, they were like basic Chevrolets, like a Biscayne, a Rambler.
Now, were you talking like this was probably in the early '60s?
Mid-60s.
Mid-60s?
Mid-60s.
So you're talking like mid-50s cars? Like, are you talking like
Late.
like a decade old type of car?
Yeah, something 10, 15 years old.
Right.
You know, one of my first cars was a '53 Chevy, and I paid $75 for it. That was big time.
And that was, would you say that was above the going rate at the time, or that was about what a car would go for?
You would get a car for that. You would get a good driving car for that.
Okay.
I mean, I bought a '59 Rambler station wagon for $15. I drove it for 2 months, drove it to the junkyard, got $15 back.
Really? Okay.
So,
See, this I never knew. I didn't know you could almost. It's almost like renting a car and just trading in and getting your money back and then doing it again.
renting cars were expensive.
Okay.
During the late '60s, early '70s, you know, I was moving upstate, and I was going to rent a truck. But to rent a truck was going to run me about $300. So I went out and bought a pickup truck for $250. I registered it, I insured it,
Okay.
and I kept it for quite a while and then sold it. So,
See, that's something that even my generation, especially younger, wouldn't even come to mind type of thing. Like, it's just, you know, you're gonna have to, you know, it's almost like the rental companies, depending on, I guess, who was behind the counter, it's almost like a wink wink, where you could rent this for me for $300, but why don't you just go buy one for $2?
yeah, they wouldn't tell you that.
Well, I guess maybe if you knew the guy behind the counter or something, but it's weird to, you know, especially in today's world, it's weird to think that, you know, you need a vehicle now. It's cheaper to rent one for a few days, but back in the day, you would just go buy one. And they were like, again, for my own clarification, they weren't beaters necessarily that you were buying.
No, they were dependable cars.
Okay.
They were
So
just-
why were people? Is that just the way
Cars
it
were
was?
cheap.
Is that was just the way it was?
Yeah.
There was a surplus of automobiles versus.
They were cheap, you know, and everybody was buying a newer car.
Okay.
So they were just dumping the older cars.
And they worked fine.
They
for the
worked
most part.
fine. So,
Obviously not like the stuff they make today.
they weren't complicated either.
Well, that's
I
true.
mean, now you have all the electronics and computerization and everything even in your cars, but back then, a car was a very simple thing to work on. So if you
Okay.
if
that
you
makes
needed a
sense.
set of brakes, you would do the brake job yourself. You did the oil change yourself.
Where you had
tune-ups.
friends that knew it.
Right. You know, we would get together as a group.
Right. I mean, and I've actually been thinking about that a lot lately. It's just the way it was versus the way it is now. You know, I can't fathom, you know, leaving the house without my phone. It's just it's just the way it is now. Like to think there were, you know, and I was discussing this on other social media the other night, that to think that you would collect You know, you would just collect cards, for instance. You would kind of socialize at a show, and there were always, and that's another thing that is starting to come back again, but for the most part, there were 5 shows a month when I was, you know, a teenager. When I was a driving age, and there was one every Saturday, and then there was once a month on a Wednesday.
Well, before you were of driving age, I was taking you to the shows.
Well, I was going to ask about that next.
But I wasn't personally interested in the cards.
Right.
But you were. So I would take you to the show, and you would go and do your thing, and then I would go hang out with the guest speakers or the signers or something like that. You know, and just we went to a show in Manhattan one time, and you were running around, and I saw Bob Gibson was doing signings. So I went over, and I was standing there, and he was watching some basketball on television. They had a little screen there. It was like Final Four. So I went around the table and stood behind him and was watching the game. Security came over and immediately wanted to make me move. And I said, "What? I'm watching the game with Bob. Leave us alone." And Bob looked over, "Yeah, leave him alone." So it worked out that I was able to just hang out there.
It worked, you know, you could do that back then. And I remember pretty vividly when we met Yastrzemski.
Yeah?
Yeah. That was in '83, it was.
Yeah. We went to a lot of shows.
Yeah, we saw I would say infamous sports car dealer.
Uh-huh.
That
had a display case.
Yes, and
with 5.
Do you remember the gentleman's name?
I don't remember his name, but I remember there were only 5 Mantle rookie cards in the display case
not a rookie
on the table. No.
52 tops, not a rookie.
I've sit corrected.
But yes, that would be Alan Rosen was his name.
And yeah, we did a lot of shows. When I was first dating my current wife, Elena, we were dating and your birthday was coming up. And Elena said, "What are you getting Eric for his birthday?" I said, "Get him a card." "Yes, but in addition to his birthday card." No, I'm getting him a baseball card. She said, "What? That's all you're going to get him?" I said, "Yes, that's what he wants, and we're going to go get him a card." And I believe we got you a Yastrzemski rookie card.
Yes, so. Which I've actually shown on this. I actually still have it. I still have all the ads you gave me over the years, and I've shown it before. I guess I should have brought it with me. That would have been smart planning. But I did get it graded by BGS at the time. It was in 2005 or 2006 probably. And it did grade a 5, BG 5. So, you know, considering, you know,
its
age and everything it went through from when it was issued in 1960 until 2005, you know, getting it as a gift in the 80s, and then, you know, taking care of it the best you can and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, and to roll back on what you said earlier, like the stuff that you tend to collect doesn't have monetary value.
Correct.
But it has intrinsic value and sentimental value, which I think a lot of the people, a lot of the guys and gals watching that are my age or in that area have ties to certain cards. Like you can say, like by definition, the 86 Donruss Jose Canseco doesn't have much monetary value. I'm talking about average, you know, not a Gem Mint 10 commands some nice books, but I'm saying your average run-of-the-mill copy is not, you know, a barn burner and knock you down with the price tag attached to it, but it has tremendous sentimental value to anyone who was collecting at the time. Same thing, you go 2 years prior, into 84 Donruss Mattingly was a very big card. And these were these were cards from the 80s that set the tone. You know, whether that tone wound up being good or bad is obviously debatable, because everyone thought, you know, their Jeffree Stars were going to put their kids through college. You know, and their hordes of 88 Tops wax, like, oh, you hear the stories all the time. I mean, you probably, not so much anymore, but you probably have friends over the years that say, hey, I've got all these cards in the attic. And then you'll say, oh, my son is really into cards.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'll tell me, and I'll say, well, unfortunately, reality is saying
They're
that
not worth it.
these were massively produced and not what they were promised to be in the future.
Well, there's a lot more that goes to collecting as well. I mean, knowing what you're collecting and why you want to collect it is a big factor. The hunt is always a great thing. I mean, going to all these different places and you know, just you go into a card shop or a comic book shop, even a record store now, which are few and far between, but some of them
More
are
of
starting
those
to
than
come
cards.
back. Starting to come back.
Yeah.
You know, just going to those stores and looking through piles and piles of and boxes of things just to find what you are interested in.
Absolutely. I've got one of my, speaking of records, because I've talked about them on here, is like, and he brought up a great point. Like, he was digging is what they call it when you go to the record store.
Mm-hmm.
You're crate digging, and he had found a particular Guns N' Roses album that had been out of print on vinyl,
Mm-hmm.
an EP called Patience, for those who know. But he had found a copy in the wild, you know, out
Right, in the
at
box.
the record store, and he picked it up for a friend of his. I don't know the gentleman he picked it up for, but I was like, all right. And you know, this was when my knowledge was a little less than it is now as far as records go. And my friend said, yeah, the other guy who he picked it up for, he doesn't buy music on the internet.
Okay.
Like, he doesn't, you can go to eBay and just hit to buy it now. He said that's no
fun.
That's no fun. There's no challenge to that.
Right.
And to an extent, at least in the music collecting, that makes sense.
Right.
Because, you know, on the device I'm recording right now, I could hit 3 or 4 buttons and pretty much listen to any song I want to.
Right.
Without any challenge. So that's kind of, in regards to the music, like the record collecting, that's how it is as far as, like, you want to buy this album, okay, there's probably any album you can think of, there's a dozen at least on sale on the internet somewhere and all the time. So it adds to the, like you were saying with the hunt, it adds to the fun of it. Like, I picked up this particular record, you know, it was at this shop, it was this, and it brings you back when you look at it.
Also, budget.
Yes.
You have to consider your budget, what you can really afford to go out and get.
Right.
I mean, there are book collectors that I know, they're paying thousands and thousands of dollars for books. You know, they're out of print books that may have been inscribed or signed by the author, and, you know, these are things that they want for their collection, but can they afford it? That's the next thing, you know. You don't want to overextend yourself, and just because somebody else has got it, you know, a little FOMO go on there.
Oh yeah.
You got to really reel it in and make sure that you are not going beyond your budget. Not sacrificing, you know, a meal because you want to have this card or something.
Right.
Like that, or several meals.
Right.
You know, and having an exit strategy on a collection is also a thing to consider.
Right.
I mean, my Hess truck exit strategy was executed pretty much as I planned. Some of the trucks that I had increased in value, and I profited from those. And some of the trucks I had didn't, and when I gave them away, I just profited from that, knowing that they were given away.
Right. Right.
So.
And I think a lot of, and another thing that I always speak about here, is that a lot of people that are, especially if you're new to the channel, have to remember, if you're new to any particular hobby this applies to, and you're consuming content and you're learning, you have to remember that some of these people have done this for a very long time.
Oh yes.
So the stuff they're showing you seems great and fantastic, but they've had it a long time back before it was great or fantastic or quote unquote valuable.
Correct.
So that's another aspect. Like I always say, it's a marathon and not a sprint. Like collecting, and all the cliches, grass is always greener, all that stuff applies. Like you said, the FOMO is a big, those who don't know, that means fear of missing out.
Mm-hmm.
That's a huge factor, especially in today's society with a lot of instant gratification with social media
Right.
and stuff like that.
I mean, people collect things because they like things as well.
Sure.
And Pokemon cards are a perfect example of that. I don't have any Pokemon cards, but my granddaughter does, and my grandson does.
So does your
and
son.
my son has. But these are things that I'm not particularly interested in, but I certainly support their interest in it.
That's huge.
And I mean, you've had cards many years.
40 plus years.
Yeah. But I remember you getting cards at 10 years old, 11 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And they weren't that expensive then. They were just cards that you wanted, and you felt that they would be something to have in your
Right.
collection.
They meant to me, right.
And now, 40 years later, they have value to them.
Mm-hmm.
They have more value to you as a personal possession
Right.
than what the dollar value would be,
Right.
but they have value.
Mm-hmm.
And value also could be taken, factor in inflation. I mean,
That's true.
People think, oh, you bought that for $10 and it's, 30 years later it's worth $50. Well, when I was a kid, we were paying 25 cents for a gallon of gas.
And $15 for a cup.
And $15 for a car. You're not paying that kind of money for things anymore.
No.
Some of the cars that I junk now are worth $25,000 and $30,000.
Right. But at the time.
Right. So, but what's made them valuable is inflation and scarcity.
Mm-hmm.
So, there aren't that many 1960 Chevy convertibles driving around.
No.
I got, I think, 150 for mine.
Yeah.
When I
Which was
finally
probably
got
good at the time.
It was. It's enough money to go out and buy another car.
There you go.
So, things like that have to be considered.
For sure. Well, I wanted to thank you for hopping on the channel with me. I think, and I've reiterated that this point before, and I'll do it again, I think it's important for those of us making content to have on their platform a loved one, someone special to them, to not to relate, but just to have it on record,
Right.
just to have it. It's always going to be there. It's always going to be on YouTube. So future generations can see these things whenever they want.
And this is a medium that we didn't have when I was younger.
Or me.
We had the 8mm,
True.
film, which I have some downstairs. Supposedly I'm on them, but I have nothing to watch it on.
Right.
There's no way for me, to go back and see what's on it.
Right. And it wasn't super common either, was it?
No.
Like, let me film you back in the 60s. Let me roll some footage.
Well, it depended on your family and what they had.
Okay.
Because not everybody could even afford those things at the
Sure.
time.
That's what I meant.
Yeah. But
Whereas
if
now with smartphones, it's not difficult
yeah,
to get a
pretty
smartphone.
much everyone's got them.
Right.
But if you watch National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, you got Chevy Chase in the attic sitting there watching an old film of when he was a kid, supposedly. So that's a reference that somebody might be able to relate to what I was talking about.
For sure.
So.
For sure. We've got people of all ages watching. So again, I want to thank you for your time. And I actually learned something because I didn't know you were buying cars for $15 or $20. So we should go out and buy some cars right now.
I have no place to put them.
For $15 or $20, we'd find places.
Oh, we'd have to slap plates on them and park them on the street like the old days.
Nice.
Stay well, everyone. Bye.